Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 4 of the anime series, Hitsugi no Chaika Avenging Battle. Pretty intense and revelatory episode, I have to say, as we're picking up from the cliffhanger of the last episode, seeing Chaika and Frederica careening down upon this island contained within a magical barrier out at sea, a mysterious island for all intents and purposes, and we're pretty much left hanging with it looking like anyone could die at any moment. The ship that Red Chaika and her brood, as well as Toru and Akari, were on, were attacked by a kraken, and we just don't know who's going to survive. But of course we see that all of them do, and we begin with Chaika, who's basically coming to in this dark forest on this island, having been effectively split from Frederica, and she's kind of accosted at first by these Othros, which we haven't seen since the first season, these like dog creatures and such, which she basically gets away from using some bright light magic and stuff like that. But effectively she hands herself over to the capture of these demi-humans who we don't get a good look at. They're all wearing like cloaks and hoodies and everything like that, but that we are soon to find out work for Victor Ismash, who is basically the assistant director of Arthur Gaz's Institute of Magic, which I guess the facility for which is now existing on this island, protected by that barrier, and the entire facility itself is actually underground, which is pretty intriguing considering what they're up to. As we find out in this episode, they are trying to mass produce these perfected monsters and creatures, the Orthros, the Phalas, and everything like that we've seen previously in the series, as well as some other mysterious stuff that pertains to the multiple Chaikas seeking out Arthur Gaz's remains and all of that, which we are basically revealed to finally how that all kind of occurred. Of course, the big question remains what exactly it's all going to amount to, but basically we see that Red Chaika and her brood are also captured. They're basically contained within a cell, and we meet these two new characters, these demi-humans. I almost want to call them sympathizers, potentially, with Chaika, or at least against Ismash, because first we're debuted to Cyril, who is this guy who's basically not very happy with the attitude Ismash is showing. He's very sort of racist against demi-humans and their uses. You know, he sees them as kind of slaves and talks about doing magical manipulation and tests on them to get rid of them because they're so in the way all the time and everything like that. And Cyril is very disturbed and angered by this kind of attitude that Ismash displays. And then, of course, we have the girl Ursula, and it's kind of implied or hinted at that there's a relationship between them. Whether or not that's familial or perhaps romantic remains to be seen. But Ursula is very friendly toward Chaika, bringing her her food and being very afraid to kind of answer any questions about, Chaika's surroundings, being held in this cell, and what this facility is. She talks about basically someone higher up than her will come to talk to her, but then she does actually answer a few questions that she can. So again, I kind of feel like these are potentially two sympathetic characters toward our heroes and such like that. And it's kind of interesting. I'm almost waiting for another Chaika to show up, and these two will be the ones that, travel with her, seeking the relics and everything like that. But as we get around to catching up with Toru and Akari, we see that they basically have decided to split up, with Akari staying behind to, keep an outward look, as Toru basically wants to get inside the facility, try to track down Chaika and save her. And the interesting thing is, of course, we see Akari is fighting many of the Phala. There's like a bunch of them and everything like that, and she eventually is led to Frederica. They are reunited as Toru has basically tracked down Chaika and saved her effectively. As they're making their escape, though, of course, they can't go back to the exit that Toru came in from because of all the guards and everything running amok, and they are becoming aware that there are outside forces, that being Akari and Frederica respectively, still outside, wreaking havoc as it were. So as we see, Toru and Chaika have to find another means of escape, and they end up going down into the internal depths of this island, this cave work, where they stumble across this giant sort of, I guess you could almost say, a cemetery of failed Phala and such like that. These creatures that have died, and it's just en masse. You're not quite sure what to make of it until finally this giant, deep echoing voice comes out of nowhere and says, "These are duplicates." And of course, Toru and Chaika are kind of taken aback when they realize where the voice is emanating from. And it actually kind of stunned me as well, being that they just in the last episode came from being attacked by a kraken. In this episode, we have a chained up, sort of dying, speaking kraken, which Chaika points out, very much like the dragoons, the dragon characters like Frederica. These krakens apparently have a great, great intelligence. And so this Kraken, for all intents and purposes, is communicating and explaining that through the manipulation of magic within this facility, the Institute of Magic, these phalos have been, basically mass-produced, or they've been trying to mass-produce them, and this particular graveyard of sorts is the failed remnants of the ones that have come before, that they tried to create in perfecting this process. And because this giant Kraken is on its way out, it knows its days are numbered, it decides to answer some questions put to it, but of course we don't get all of the information right then and there, because this is the point when Cyril catches up to them and still trying to be dutiful to the last. He's basically got to take captive Toru and Chaika once again, which of course, once it gets back to Izmash that there are Chaikas on this island and the ramifications of that, we find out that a previous Chaika, the blue Chaika, had been there once before. And he figures there's got to be something to this. Maybe this is something Arthur Gaz himself set in motion to try to lead these, Chaikas to this island. So he wants to meet and confer with them. And so both the proper Chaika and Red Chaika are brought before him. And it's very interesting in the scene that he, explains sort of the details of the Chaikas, that within his little room, he's got this strangely quiet, potentially elfin or maybe demi-human girl contained in a sort of stasis field that she looks as though she's asleep, that kind of thing. But as the Chaikas enter the room, she comes to, and she's kind of silently looking at them, which is intriguing because it's like, who's this girl? What are they using her for? What is her purpose? But Izmash basically seems almost incredulous and surprised, gleefully so, at the fact that this girl is now reacting where she's remained dormant since, I guess, the last Chaika was there, Blue Chaika. And he goes on to explain the details of the Chaikas, that in the war, the aftermath of the war that Arthur Gaz's empire was central to, you had a lot of orphaned children, a lot of orphaned girls who were taken captive, and through the manipulation of magic, they were given new faces, Chaika-like faces, new memories, and all that kind of stuff, basically given the drive to seek out Arthur Gaz's remnants, his remains, for whatever this big mystical, magical, destiny-laden purpose that Arthur Gaz had set up. And so all of these girls, it's almost a cruel revelation that each one of these Chaikas must have had a family and must have lost family. Maybe they even still have family out there somewhere. Maybe this Chaika will find that she has a parent or something like that at the culmination of the story. It remains to be seen, but it's quite gruesome how giddy Izmash is as he's talking about this, because he's astounded that these Chaikas have found their way to this island, and he's going to basically, he threatens that he's going to dissect their brains to kind of understand what drove them to be there, how they found the place, and all this kind of stuff. And we're pretty much leaving off with that revelation of the horrors potentially to come, unless, of course, somebody intervenes or an escape can be manifested and everything like that, as well as coinciding with Gillette's former crew, and now Nikolai, who is the leader of the crew. He, Vivi, and a couple of the others are talking to this old man in the seaside village, I guess, which was the same, the very same in the last episode that Toru Kari basically got their ship and chartered it from and everything like that, or stole it, as it were. Finding out from this old man that up to 90 years before the invention of the flying fortresses we saw at the end of the last season, they were already kind of in existence, maybe. Floating continents, or whatever you want to call them, were a part of Arthur Gaz's empire. And this is very mystifying to, of course, Nikolai, Vivi, and the rest of them, along with the revelations of this potential wealth and fortune that Arthur Gaz has, which is said to be contained on the island that the rest of our heroes now find themselves deposited on. Just a grand mystery, and very exciting with all the revelations that we finally have some, I guess you could say iffy confirmations on with the mystery of the Chaikas and everything. So I can't wait to see where we go from here, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 4 of Hitsugi no Chaika Avenging Battle, if you've seen it. Otherwise, I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.